Hello guys, how are you doing? Welcome back to my channel. It's Intentional Favor here. If you are new here, thank you so much for clicking to watch this video. Please subscribe. Also turn on your notification bell so that you get notified each time I upload new videos. And to my amazing returning subscribers, I love you guys so much. Thanks for always coming back. Finding accommodation is a major challenge faced by immigrants in the UK. Therefore, in today's video, I'll be sharing with you important things that you must look out for when looking for accommodation in the United Kingdom. Hopefully, that will make your accommodation search easy. The first on my list is that you should not limit your accommodation search to the city or town where your university or workplace is located. This is one mistake many people make, and it makes finding accommodation very stressful, or it takes longer time for people to find accommodation. When you limit your accommodation search to the city or town where your university or workplace is located, you find out that you also limit your options. But you can also look at other cities or other towns that are next to the city where your school, your university, or your workplace is located. And that way you have so many options and you can easily get accommodation. I'll give you a few examples. If your university is in Sheffield, for instance, there are other towns and cities next that are around Sheffield. For instance, you have Rotherham, you have Barnsley. There are a lot of them. You might be thinking that when you live in these other places, transportation to your university or to your workplace will be difficult, but that is not usually the case. In many cities, there are intercity and inter-town transportation. There are transportations from Rotherham to Sheffield, from Barnsley to Sheffield, train, buses, tram, mention them. They are usually available. And I'm just giving this example with Sheffield, which is where I live, but mind you, it's not limited to that. Another example from my experience is Chester. If your university is in Chester, there are towns and cities around Chester where you can also extend your accommodation search. Popularly is Liverpool. Okay, there are interconnections, like when it comes to transportation, between Chester and Liverpool. That way you find out that you must not live in Chester. Now, if you want to live close to the university or where you work, that's absolutely fine. But mind you, this tip is something that will make your options very wide, and it can make your accommodation search easy by making you find accommodation easily. Yeah, because when you have other options of Chester and Liverpool and not just Chester, in this case you find out that you might easily get an accommodation in Liverpool, but when you are waiting for an accommodation in Chester or that particular city where your workplace or university is located, it can take you ages for you to find an accommodation. So try as much as possible. Transportation is not a problem. Like I said, there are always intercity and intertown transportation systems in almost every city or town in the United Kingdom, so that's not a problem at all. The second point, just like the first one, is that you should note that city center or town center accommodations are very expensive compared to accommodation in other areas of the city. Very true. You find out that some people make this mistake. Most universities, sometimes they are situated at the city center or the town center. And what students or what people, immigrants, do is that when they are looking for accommodation, they are looking for accommodations near their university, near their workplace. When you do that, and depending on the funds available to you, you find out that the accommodation you will get will be very expensive. Any accommodation that is situated in the city center or the town center, best believe it's very expensive when you compare it to accommodation outside city center and town center. So bear this at the back of your mind. Just like I said previously, most times in the UK there are always transportation systems that are good. Sometimes it might be bad, don't get me wrong, depending on the city or the town. Sometimes transportation system can be very terrible, but it's not usually that very bad in the UK. Okay, all you need is to know the transport schedule. When is your train time, when is your bus time, and when is the best time for you to leave your house to go out, to catch your bus or to catch your train. That's all you need, proper planning. So you should not worry about transportation. Let that not be the only reason why you want your to get an accommodation in the city center. If you love city life, if you want to live at city center, then that's a different reason. But I'm just creating this awareness in case you don't know. When you are looking for accommodation, it must not be close to your university or close to your workplace. Try and spread your options, because accommodation in the city center, actually, oh my gosh, you don't want to know, they are very expensive. The next point is closeness to amenities such as shops. Yes, this is very, very important. If you don't drive, most times when you come into the UK, depending on your financial circumstances, you might not, get a car easily, or the first thing on your list is not to get a car, or you cannot even afford getting one. So that means that you depend on public transportation, right? One thing I will advise also that you should just take into consideration when looking for accommodation is to consider closeness to shops around where you are finding accommodation, especially if you don't drive, because it might be easier for you to go and get, grocery, which is something you do, especially if you have kids. You may be doing it weekly or monthly, depending on your situation. But it's very important, or it makes life easier when you have shops around you. When I say nearness or closeness to amenities like shops, I'm not saying that you must live next to a big grocery shop like Asda, Tesco, Aldi, Lidl, and all of that. No, that's not my point. But just make sure that it is not too far. It's something that maybe you can use just one bus, go and come back, rather than you, because there are situations like that, believe me, whereby where someone finds accommodation, you have to take two buses for you to go for shopping, and you'll be carrying heavy bags. You know what I mean, because you don't drive. So try as much as possible to consider this when looking for accommodation. Another amenity to look for if you have kids is parks, closeness to parks. Most times there are parks everywhere in the UK. That's one thing that you might love to do with your kids. Take them to the parks to play. There are swings, there are like playgrounds are there. You can also want to check that if you have little kids. Another thing to consider when it comes to amenities is school, very important. For this point, it might not be so important, but I still consider it important. If your kids are of primary school age, you might not really worry so much about the schools around. But if it's secondary school, I would like to tell you this. Not every school in the UK is the best. Yes, you might not believe it, or it might come as a shock to you, but that's true. Not every school. So as much as possible, I know that most cities, okay, when it comes to giving admission to high school, even primary school, they consider your address. So what that means is that if your address is at location A, what they will do before they give you your kids admission into primary or secondary school is to look out for spaces in the what's it called, in the schools close to your address. For instance, I know that Sheffield, they do that a lot, and the nearest to you is where your kids will go. And not all schools, I say it again, are the best. Okay, so you need to also maybe check out the rating of the schools around. This one is not as important as the first two. Okay, it's not as that important as the first two, but from my experience of certain schools, with my husband having been teaching in the UK, I'll tell you, you will not want your kids to go to certain schools in this country, okay? And of course, if you go online, the rating says it all, okay? There are even citizens say they don't like their kids going to such schools. And for someone that has high expectation and all of that, you might not want to come here and your kids ending up in such schools. So if you have the time, okay, also take into consideration this point when looking for accommodation. Another point I will advise that you consider when looking for accommodation in the UK is childcare. Now, this is purely my opinion, okay? Some people might not totally agree with me, others may. I'm talking about childcare. I mean to consider where you have family members or friends around if you have kids. So childcare in the UK is not just expensive, sometimes it's very stressful to find childcare, basically. All right, so if you have a particular city or town where you have some family members there, you have some friends there, and in most cases you find out that when you come into the UK, for many immigrants, you might not have sorted out your accommodation. Either you are staying in Airbnb, or you are staying with a family member or friends. So when you are staying with them, your kids, they're already used to some people there, they're used to some other kids, if you have other kids there as well. I will advise, if you stay there for like 2 weeks or 1 month, depending when you find accommodation, when you are looking for accommodation, in addition to probably the town or city where your university or workplace is located, if it is not too far from where you landed or the first place you resided in when you came into the UK, I will advise you include that city also as an option when looking for accommodation. it will help you a great deal. When you have people that you can leave your kids with, it can also help you with your work, because sometimes childcare can limit your opportunities for work because someone has to stay with your kids. You cannot just leave your kids alone and go to work. All right, you must have heard some stories how doing that has landed some people into trouble in this country, or giving them an experience that they wish they never had. So if you are privileged or you are opportune to have some family and friends living in the UK already, and if the city or town where they are living in is not too far from your university, it's not too far from your workplace, I think you might consider also looking for accommodation in that city and in that town. But make sure that those people, they will be happy to help you with childcare. If not, then you might not want to do that. And another reason apart from childcare, in case you don't have kids, is having people around. In this country, people are isolated. A lot of people are isolated because you don't have friends and families, and sometimes this can affect your mental health or your emotional well-being generally. So when you have people around, it can also help your existence here in the UK, because having people around is good. And you know that if you're coming from Africa, Nigeria to be precise, we live a communal life. So you might miss that communal life. This country, I know sometimes when people are in Nigeria back home, people like to live far away from family, because wherever you live, you will still have people you can interact with. That's not usually the case here. When you come here, you might benefit from living with families and not necessarily running away from them. Okay. But like I said, this is purely my opinion. You might agree or disagree with me. The last but not the least is that you should also consider the availability of jobs in the city or town where you are looking for accommodation. Also consider the nearby cities. I'll also use Sheffield as an example in this case. Like I said earlier, there are towns and cities around Sheffield like Barnsley and Rotherham where you can consider living, okay? These cities or towns, they also have intercity transportation, so there is always a connection between them. When you are looking for accommodation, also consider the availability of jobs in that city and also in the nearby city. So if you are looking for accommodation in Sheffield, okay, think about it that it is not just only in Sheffield that you can work, okay? You can also work in Rotherham, you can also work in Barnsley, and check what is the availability of jobs in these cities or in those areas. Consider that, because you might find out that in as much as your education is important and getting accommodation is important, sustenance is also important, and one way you can sustain yourself is by working, especially for those who are coming with dependents. So it's easier for you to sustain yourself and live a comfortable life when you have jobs around. Okay, there are some cities that when you go to, it takes a lot before you can find a job. It takes a lot. It's so much hard work. Some people spend 4 or 5 months in the UK looking for jobs, okay, and it's not possible. So it will also benefit you because you might not get everything in one package, okay. So it might just be because of jobs that you are living in this place, okay. You might think of maybe a very popular city like Manchester, and it's also close to where your university is located. So you might want to live in Manchester because you know that, oh, there are jobs available. You might want to live in Sheffield because you know there are jobs available in Sheffield and the environment, okay, even though your university may be located in somewhere else, you know what I mean. So this is another factor for you to consider when looking for accommodation. And with that, guys, I've come to the end of this video. But please don't forget to like this video, give it a thumbs up if it helped you. Also share this video with as many people that you think might need it. Let me know in the comment section. Probably you are living in the UK already, you have tips, okay, when it comes to looking for accommodation. What other things can you add to this point that you think that people will need to consider when they are looking for accommodation in the United Kingdom? I would like to know in the comment section. Let's help one another, and I'll be seeing you guys in my next video. Until then, stay blessed, remain intentional, and take good care of yourselves. Bye.